Hi, baby boomer fans. We are Jackie and Janine, the Pfeiffer Sisters, and love to talk about the 1950s, inviting you to reminisce with us as we explore experiences of that decade.
We chronicled the distinct memories of our childhood in our book, While the Windmill Watched, a slice of rural America in the 1950s, which takes you on a notably historic journey through that often forgotten decade. We also want to hear about your experiences during the 1950s. We will feature guests whose special stories of that decade will bring to mind magical moments of reflection, some with tears, some with smiles, but above all, a good dose of laughter.
We would like you to chat with us as we bring to mind the sights and sounds so familiar to that time in history. Grab your favorite malt or Green River. Make sure you are wide awake and get ready to be inspired about the 1950s. Welcome to the 1950s Fun Chat. Greetings, everyone. We are so glad that you have joined us today. We have a very, very special guest and can't wait to have you meet her as well. But before we do that, I'd like to mention that in the lower right-hand corner of our screen is a red subscribe button, and to the left of that is a thumbs up button. If you would be so kind as to please click on both of those and subscribe to our channel, along with the same time of giving us a thumbs up on this broadcast. We know that you are enjoying what we're doing, and just as much as we're enjoying bringing the memories of the 1950s live, you might say, because we have people who actually lived during that time or were influenced by someone who did live during that time. Jackie, what do you have in store for us today?
Well, before I tell you what's in store today, I would like to have our listeners look at the bottom of the screen while you're perusing around. You will see the www While the Windmill Watched banner. And I also would like to encourage you to look at the upper right-hand corner. That beautiful book cover is a North Dakota sunset. And do pay attention to that because we're going to be referring to the book as we go on. But I would certainly like to now at this time introduce you to our very special guest that we have, Judy Goehring Miller. Born in 1942, was our babysitter, and we're so pleased to have her. Judy grew up in Menoken and was one of her father and my father were just really good friends. They played together, they worked together, and we'll go into that a little bit more. Judy now resides on a ranch west of Mandan. So Judy, let's begin by having you tell us about growing up on a farm without running water or indoor plumbing.
Well, I'll tell you, we did have running water, but I had to run and get it and bring it back in the house. So,
of course,
but it was different. Some people would probably say ick because you didn't get to take a bath as often as those that had running water. Saturday nights were bath nights at the Goehring household. Naturally, we had a wash basin that we used for weekly our daily washings, I should say, and we always washed our hair. But other than that, and then we had to carry the water back out. We did not have. You had to always watch, though, to make sure that the pail that was underneath the sink was not full and going to run over on you when you dumped the dishwasher water, because then you had to scrub the floor.
Was that called a slop bucket, Judy?
You are correct.
Okay. And what did you do with the water then?
Well, at our house, we just took it out and dumped it in the ditch, so to speak, that went down by our driveway. It wasn't to feed the hogs. Some people used to say their slop bucket, but ours did not have. We had a separate pail that Mother put the peelings, potato peelings and cabbage leaves and that sort of thing in. That went to the hogs, but the other stuff just went down the ditch. Maybe watered the tree beside the house. I don't really know.
And then how did you get hot water, Judy?
After we brought it in from the well, which was, I suppose, about a block from the house, then it was heated in a what you call a tea kettle, or if it was wash day, then my mother had what they called a copper bottom tub that she heated. It took two burners on the stove to put that on that she heated her hot water for to wash her clothes.
Hmm. And was that called a copper boiler?
You are right.
Okay. And I recall too, going back to dumping the dishwater outside in a lot of books that I've read about growing up on the prairies. So often women would plant a rose bush outside their back door, and the dirty dishwater would get thrown on that, and that rose bush prospered. Did you have that same situation at your house?
We did not have a rose bush, but there was I think it was an elm tree right next to the house that got a lot of water. Yes.
Okay, that sounds good. And how did you heat your home back then?
Well, our home was heated with coal. My dad and your dad would go to the mine and get coal directly from it, and the coal used to come. I'm going to say sometimes it was in 4-foot by 5-foot chunks, and you had to chop it into pieces with a sledgehammer and an axe so it would fit in the stove to heat the house.
Okay. So tell us about when you got electricity.
We got electricity, I'm going to say about 1948. I'm not actually sure on that because I think it was the year, my sister is 6 years older than I am, and I think it was the year that she started school. So it would have been 1948. But it was one of those things that it was not nearly as reliable as what the electricity is today. My mother never got rid of her lantern or her lamp that on the kitchen table because it wasn't as dependable. Any little like today now here it's raining here. Any little lightning storm, the electricity would go out, or maybe even in a big windstorm. So we always had a lantern sitting on our kitchen table or living room table to.
Mm-hmm. Were your outbuildings, was your barn wired for electricity also, or granaries?
The barn was, yes. The barn was.
Okay. And imagine that was helpful very much because you did milk cows, didn't you?
Yes, we did. It was helpful because the barn was wired, and at that time, then my folks had a milking machine.
Okay.
So
Nice.
the electricity in the barn helped them be able to get the milking machine to milk the cows with.
But tell us before that, how was that milking done, and who did the milking?
My mother and dad. A little side effect on that. Our folks raised two girls, my cousins, and my cousin the older one worked at Eddie's Bakery in Bismarck, but she couldn't drive and she had to be to work real early in the morning. So I would take her in and then I'd crawl back to bed. Well, one morning I remember my mother just as distinctly as if she was here now coming in and say, "It's time to get up." I says, "What?" Because I had to be to work at 10 and this was like at 7. "You're going to learn to milk cows." And I said, "Huh?" She says, "Well, your cousin Linda can milk you, so can you." So after the 4th day of sitting me down with the tamest cow in there, and we had 9 cows to milk, I think, and she had to finish milking. She milked the other 8, and I only had a quarter of a pail of milk. She decided, "You go feed the chickens and do the other chores. I may as well milk all these cows because I got to finish up anyway."
Your milkmaid career was short, wasn't it?
That 3 days at the longest.
Yeah, okay, well, you worked that one well.
Yes, I did. There's little tricks to the trade once in a while.
That's right. Go ahead.
What other chores then did you do on the farm?
Well, then there was always chickens to feed. And after the separating was done, then there was pale calves to feed. which I hated because you always had two of them trying to get in their bucket at the same time.
Right.
And then with the skim milk, my dad used to take ground feed, and then you had poured the skim milk over the top of that ground feed and made it, only other way I can say is slop for the pigs.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
And I'll tell you, if you're ever going to see a herd of flies, was it. I mean, to have to feed that, then you had to scrape it out of this 50-gallon barrel and pour it in the trough of the hog. You know.
Yeah.
Did,
Okay.
did it start smelling sour then too?
Yes, it did. Yes, it smelled very sour.
Did you ever have much of a fly problem in your house?
I'm not really, but you had those. I don't know if you girls. I'm sure you had them too. Mother had those sticky tapes,
Right.
spindle
Okay.
things that she hung on the entryway and probably in the kitchen or whatever, that the flies were attracted to. So I can't recall that I had any more flies in the house growing up than I got now.
Okay. Well,
I'd like to
Judy,
change the focus. Janine, unless you have one more thing you want to say.
no, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, I would like to change the focus to the power of friendship.
Mhm.
My sister and I learned about that power of friendship from observing our fathers together. Jack and Howard were two best friends. They worked together, they played together, they were in business together, they were on the same boards together. They were just really good friends, and they just were so entertaining. I love sitting and listening to them talk, tell jokes, and they just really had a deep friendship. Tell us about your dad.
Well, my dad was a very hard worker in some respects, but yet it was my mother who was the push behind it, because I have to tell this on my dad. When they would buy groceries, he'd always have to buy his comic book.
Ah,
Well, he would get that comic book, and then he would sit and read that comic book from cover to cover instead of being out doing chores. So
well,
anyway, it was kind of a comical thing with him.
yeah, right.
And
Well,
but they worked together a lot. They cut silage together. They thrashed together, your dad and mine. And they had another partner by the name of Leonard Pfleger that also, he owned part of the thrash machine. And how it came about, I don't know. I know how Leonard Pfleger and my dad got together because they used to live close together. But how your dad and my dad got acquainted with each other, I don't know.
well, they were just both very social, and it's a community, and you kind of migrate to like personalities, perhaps. I don't know. Anyway, besides that, the shearing. Did your dad?
We didn't have sheep until
okay.
after you got. But my brother used to come. Charles used to come over at shearing time and help with you.
Yeah, I remember
How
that.
we got involved in sheep was your dad had a couple of bottle lambs that he just didn't, and he pawned them off on my dad.
Yeah.
And they were underneath our kitchen table for 3 weeks.
Oh my God.
Oh, really?
Yes. So anyway, but that's how I came to be, that sheep grew up with sheep.
They were also 4-H leaders together. They were on the school board together. They were in this community play together, Leave It to Grandma. But it was just a good lesson for Janine and me.
Right. And I don't really know. And this is just how they got acquainted. I have no idea how they got acquainted, except for the fact that the community that we grew in was basically Catholic, and your folks and mine were non-Catholic. How that came about, I don't know. But I know that all of a sudden, they were best of pals, so to speak.
They were together. So tell us
I don't know if you remember or not, they used to call them the Bobbsey twins.
Yes, I do. I remember that.
Yes.
Tell us about your mom's relationship with the Menoken school.
Yes, my mom was one of the first cooks they had at Menoken School,
Mhm.
uh, and she was the president of the PTA for a few years. A member of the Homemakers Club. I think maybe she was the instigator in starting the Homemakers Club in Menoken. I don't know that.
Uh-huh.
But she was one of the first cooks at the Menoken School.
Well, it's interesting that in our book, While the Windmill Watched, we do have a section of recipes from that time. And one of the recipes that we've included in there was your mom's.
Yes, I know that.
Yeah,
I know that.
I love that recipe. And actually, that's a recipe that I talk about in the book where we made it. It was, you might say, it was one of our first home economics classes in school at that time. But was there any particular food item that your mom made for this hot lunch program that you got tired of?
Yes, tuna casserole.
Oh,
Tuna
really?
casserole.
Tuna casserole and baked beans.
Yeah.
And why did she make them that so much?
Well, you have to remember that Menoken School had Catholics going there. And my mother respected that they did not eat meat on Fridays at all. So on Fridays, she either made tuna casserole, grilled cheese sandwiches, something meatless. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Judy, you were a very fun and memorable babysitter.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Tell us about your babysitting experiences with the Pfeiffer Sisters.
Well, I'll tell you, I was very glad when you guys, I don't know if I know Janine wasn't born yet, but when they moved from their old house to the new house, the house that's standing there now, because there was no running water in the old house, and it was just a pleasure that they had the running water, and I just enjoyed there mostly because of the running water. I grew up without running water, so it was a treat for me.
Right.
I think a lot of our viewers now would wonder how we even get along without running water, but that was life, and it was life on the prairie. It was that life in the 1950s, at least on the Great Plains.
Right.
But little by little, it changed.
I myself got married in 1971, and my dad did not have running water then yet.
Oh,
okay.
So often people say, well, my grandpa and grandma walked to school uphill both ways in the winter and weather. Tell us about your transportation to and from school.
Well, I usually got a ride to school, but most of the time we had to walk home. In the wintertime, back then, the folks parked the car across the tracks from where I lived in a driveway. And so we would walk from my house across the tracks over to the car. And then because to get out of our yard was a half a mile or a quarter of a mile, and it was usually blocked in the wintertime.
Yes, and that was a very busy railroad line, the Northern Pacific. That was the main branch, east and west through the state.
That's very right. Busy. And when my mother cooked at the school, there were several times that we had to carry the stuff that she was going to make for lunch walking because we couldn't get out of our yard. Ooh. And I was scared to death because we walked on the railroad tracks.
Yes. Did you ever use a sled to move those items?
Okay. No.
Well, Judy, in wrapping up this wonderful conversation down memory lane, what can you consider as one fun or pleasant memory from the 1950s?
Oh, my fondest memories was having the square dances once a month from October through May, because the community all got together, and And as young girls, we were included in it. You know, it wasn't that we got to square dance because they had the promenade or whatever, and then whoever you were next to was your partner, and they included us. It was
We did.
it was not a, you know, for grown-ups only thing or that, but and then everybody I don't remember how that went. I think if everybody brought something and then they had people appointed to, like, okay, the Pfeiffers are serving the lunch. That meant they were making the coffee and cleaning up and setting it out. I think that's how it went, is that everybody brought either a cake or a casserole or whatever, and then certain families were appointed to, they had to clean up, set it out, see that the food was out, and put
Sure.
it away, stuff like that.
Sure. It was a really, really fun time.
Yes, it was. It was very
Well
fun.
Yes. Judy, thank you so much for being a part of our Fun Chat program. This is a number 4 for Jackie and me in having these weekly broadcasts. And we just so enjoy going down memory lane, and we hope that our viewers do too, and are excited to be a part of what we're doing. So until the next time, Jackie, let your mind wander to the swell time of poodle skirts, soda jerks, and cool cars.
And I'm reminding you to be sure to click the red subscribe button and the thumbs up button, and note the www.wildthewindmillwatch.com to go there for further information. And do join us every week on Monday, 8 p.m. Central. But if you can't join us at that time, view us on our YouTube channel, The 1950s Fun Chat.
Yes, and you can learn more about Jackie and me, the Pfeiffer Sisters, at our website. It's whilethewindmillwatch.com, and perhaps you've seen it scrolling at the bottom of your screen the entire time. Click on that, please, because you will learn a lot about us from the 1950s even till today, as well as all the different vendors who are selling our book, whilethewindmillwatch.com. Or While the Windmill Watch, rather, a slice of rural America in the 1950s. You can order the book for yourself or for your friends or for family through that website. And remember, Christmas is coming up, and there are many folks who would enjoy having our book wrapped up and with a big red bow on it. So remember, it's whilethewindmillwatch.com. We've had fun today, and we hope that you have too. So we'll see you next time on the 1950s Fun Chat.
We appreciate and thank each and every one of our viewers. Toodaloo.